After being reborn, I decided not to sacrifice my career to save Jake's life anymore. On his deathbed, he dreamed and whispered, with tears in his eyes, "Ava, why didn't you save me this time?" In our first life, I loved Jake enough to give up everything. So when he got into a car accident and was on the brink of death, I didn't hesitate and used a drug that hadn't been approved yet. I saved his life. But after he recovered, Emily filed a lawsuit against me. The witness signature on the paperwork was Jake's. I got fired from the hospital and lost my medical license. I could never be a doctor again. Meanwhile, Emily took my position and became the chief physician. Jake told me, "Ava, this opportunity is crucial for Emily. She has nothing. But you, even if you're not a doctor, you still have me and Kyle." So I devoted myself to our family, becoming a full-time mom. But my efforts gradually became something else in their eyes. Jake often used work as an excuse to be with Emily. New colleagues at the hospital would assume they were a couple, praising how well they matched. Even on my birthday, our son would tug at Emily's hand, saying, "Emily, I wish you were my mom. You're so much nicer and have a better job than my mom." I couldn't bear to listen anymore, so I initiated a divorce with Jake. When I went for a walk by the sea alone, I saw a child swept into the ocean by the waves. I saved her but ended up lost to the sea myself. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself a month before Jake's accident. A colleague told me, "Ava, the supervisors just had a meeting. They decided to send you to represent our hospital at the upcoming BEHA training. If nothing unexpected happens, you'll be the chief physician when you return." I smiled and nodded in thanks. In my previous life, a similar opportunity came to me, but an hour before leaving, I heard about Jake's accident and rushed back to perform surgery on him. Emily volunteered to take my place at the training. Later, I found out the accident happened because Jake was buying Emily's favorite cake for her birthday, driving across town to get it. He crashed into a bridge pillar on the way back. I put away my phone and went out to my office balcony. I looked down and saw Jake, who had just told me he was exhausted from 3 surgeries, now snapping photos of Emily under the cherry blossom tree. "How do they look, big brother?" Emily asked excitedly, with her cheeks flushed. "Great, they always look great with you," he replied. I tried to recall if, during our 7 years of marriage, he'd ever taken pictures of me like that. But honestly, it didn't matter anymore. "Jake," I called down to him. He looked up, momentarily embarrassed. "If you have time to take pictures, I guess you're not as tired as you said." "You should attend Kyle's parent-teacher meeting this afternoon," I said. He frowned and started to say something, but Emily beat him to it. "Ava, don't misunderstand. I just wanted a photo with the cherry blossoms, that's all. You've been with Jake for so long. You know what kind of person he is, right?" Emily was always good at twisting things in her favor. I used to get flustered and end up apologizing. My constant backing down just made everyone think they could walk over me. But not anymore. I smiled at her and said, "I just asked him to attend Kyle's meeting. Isn't that what a father should do?" Jake looked at me with a mix of curiosity and surprise. I used to handle all the household matters, letting him be carefree for 7 years. He must be surprised by the change. But I turned away, focusing back in the office, shutting the balcony door. Not long after, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Jake standing there with a dessert. "The interns gifted me some food, so I brought you a little cake," he said. I stared at him for a while, then asked, "You do realize I'm allergic to cream, right?" He froze, not knowing what to do with the cake in his hand. I smirked, "Just take it back." Of course, he didn't know. Jake had never really paid attention to me. Over the years, he never celebrated my birthday. He'd see the effort I put into his and Kyle's birthdays, feel guilty for a moment, then claim he was too busy to remember mine. And then it would happen again year after year. I used to brush it off, telling myself he's just a scatterbrain, that marriage is about compromise. But knowing how much effort he put into Emily's birthday made me realize how foolish my earlier thoughts were. As I started to close the door, he stopped it and stood there, guilt in his voice. "Ava, I'm sorry." I smiled, saying, "It's all right, Jake. I've known you long enough." He seemed relieved. Then he suggested, "After I attend Kyle's parent-teacher meeting, I'll drop him off at my mom's. How about we have dinner together tonight?" It's been a while since we had a night out, just the two of us. It had been a long time. I used to rush home after work to cook, justifying that I could do more for him, because I loved him. But I didn't want to be that person anymore. Sure, I agreed. I planned to tell him about the divorce over dinner. He left looking happy. Later that evening, he messaged me, saying he was parked at the entrance waiting for me. I got dressed and headed out. From a distance, through the crowd, I saw Emily standing in front of him. She looked upset, saying something to him. As she talked, tears started falling. Jake lifted his hand and patted her shoulder. The next moment, Emily leaned into his embrace. In a split second, my eyes met Emily's. She quickly backed away, waving anxiously toward me, saying, "Ava, don't get the wrong idea." But I didn't miss the brief flash of triumph in her eyes. "Ava, Emily's cat is sick. I need to go with her to the vet. We can have lunch another day," Jake said to me. Before I could respond, Emily sniffled and said, "Senior, no need, you should go with Ava. I can manage on my own. You can't upset Ava because of me." What a manipulative little fox. Jake looked at her with concern, clearly troubled. "But you on your own, Jake. Since Emily said she can handle it herself, let's go eat," I said. Right then, I got a surprised look from Jake and disbelief from Emily, because the old me would have been the one to quietly yield in situations like this. Emily was sure about my reaction, which is why she said those two-faced words. Ignoring their stares, I opened the passenger door and got in. Jake was still standing there in a daze. I rolled down the window and looked at him. "What? Not leaving?" As Jake drove away, I saw through the rearview mirror that Emily's face was sullen, a stark contrast to her usual cheerful self. As the car moved along the highway, neither Jake nor I spoke. I noticed his distracted demeanor. After 10 minutes, it suddenly started raining outside, and his phone rang. Emily's name flashed repeatedly on the screen. He glanced at me, and I turned away. He answered the call, and Emily's frantic voice came through. "Senior, what should I do?" She started crying. "Emily, calm down, speak slowly. The doctor just said Mimi is in a coma and won't wake up. It's really serious. I'm really scared. I don't know what to do on my own. Could you come with me? I'm really scared." Jake didn't say anything, just turned his gaze toward me. I said calmly, "If I said you couldn't go, would you listen?" From the phone came the sound of her crying. He replied, "I'm sorry, Ava." He left me under the overpass, even though it was pouring outside. He didn't have time to hear anything I said, making a U-turn and disappearing into the night. I stared at the city lights flickering in the dark, pulling out a forced smile in the direction he vanished. "Jake, I gave you a chance." I grabbed a cab and headed home. Kyle was at his grandma's, so the house was empty. I took out a suitcase and started packing. As I packed, I realized how few things in this home actually belonged to me. It was incredibly easy to erase my traces here. In the past, I always put them first, neglecting myself in the process. In this home, I was used to putting myself last. On the dresser, a necklace came into view. It was the first gift Jake ever gave me when we started dating. Turns out it was also the only one. I cherished it, never even wearing it, just keeping it neatly stored and occasionally looking at it before putting it away. He often teased me about it, saying I was making a big deal out of nothing. But now, the necklace is just an irony, a joke to me. I took it out, looked at it closely, then tossed it in the trash without hesitation. As I was preparing to leave, I felt the ring on my finger. It was our wedding ring. I took it off and placed it alongside the divorce papers on the living room table. I moved into the hospital dormitory. At around 10, Jake called me several times. From the looks of it, he returned home and found the divorce papers. I didn't answer and turned off my phone. In the middle of the night, there was a hurried knocking on the dorm door. I opened it to find Jake looking disheveled, his hair windswept, and his jacket showing signs of rain. Seeing me, he leaned against the door frame with a sigh of relief. "Ava, what's going on? Stop messing around, come home with me." He reached for my wrist. I pulled away forcefully. Jake, stopped pretending. He froze, silent for a moment. "I've already signed the divorce papers. Once you sign them, we can finalize it next week." "Ava, are you mad at me?" he cautiously asked. "You've always known I've only ever seen Emily as a sister. Her parents died early, and she struggled through college to become a doctor. It's not easy for the girl, and I just want to help where I can. Don't overthink it, alright? I swear I've never done anything to betray you. I glanced at him. Jake, do you really think I have to catch you in bed with someone else to know you're cheating? You're my husband, but you constantly abandon me to help another woman. You can't remember my birthday, yet you never forget any of her important days. You don't care about my likes. You don't even know I'm allergic to cream, but you remember every little thing about her, like not putting cilantro in her hot pot. Do you really think this doesn't count as cheating? Senior. Emily's voice came as she approached down the hallway. Ava, did you guys have a fight? Is it because of me? She stood before me with an innocent face. I'm sorry. Ava, don't misunderstand Senior. It's me. She suddenly started bowing and apologizing without warning. Don't let your relationship get strained because of me. There's really nothing going on between Senior and I. I didn't want to watch her act, so I turned to close the door. Jake quickly stopped me, his voice a bit shaky. Ava, don't worry. I'll sort everything out and give you an explanation. As he finished speaking, I noticed Emily's face change. I closed the door, ignoring them. Last time around, I sacrificed my future for him and Emily, only to end up in a sad and miserable state. This time, I just want to cut ties with him as soon as possible and live well. The next day at work, I hadn't even reached my office when I saw Jake standing by the door with breakfast in hand. When he saw me, his eyes lit up, and he hurried over. I went to the breakfast spot by our college this morning to get you your favorite shumai. I noticed the shop's name on the bag. It was that place from university, about 20 kilometers from home. I didn't feel touched at all, just kind of absurd. I turned away from his outstretched hand. No need, I've already eaten, I declined. And Jake, please remember, no matter what you do, I won't change my mind about the divorce. His smile froze on his face. He stood there in the hallway, not moving, just nodding absent-mindedly at colleagues passing by who greeted him. Ava, he called out as I was about to leave. It's Kyle's birthday today. Oh right, he reminded me. This time, I had actually forgotten Kyle's birthday. Mom's making dinner tonight. Let's go celebrate his birthday after work, he said with a hopeful look. Since coming back this time, I haven't seen Kyle. Last time, I was fired and became a full-time caregiver. My days revolved around him. But to him, I had no job and was too strict, not matching his idea of a good mom. This time I'll give him a choice. Okay, I agreed. His face lit up at my confirmation. I'll pick you up after work then. With that, he hurried over to give me the breakfast before walking off quickly. I looked at the now cold shumai in my hand and tossed it into the trash. When work ended, he surprisingly stood outside my office on time, holding a grapefruit tea. It was my favorite during our dating days. I got this just for you, he said, presenting it like a gift. Passing nurses teased, Jake, you're so sweet to Ava. This tea shop always has long lines. Thanks, I said. But I don't like it anymore. Jake's face faltered. I still took it and handed it to a nurse. Want it? The nurse accepted it happily. Thanks, Ava, she said, walking off delightedly. Jake opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. I walked ahead, glancing back at him. Aren't we going to Kyle's birthday? He snapped out of it and caught up. In the car, he unusually kept trying to find topics to chat about, even throwing in a few lame jokes. I rested my head against the window, staying silent. Maybe it was just too awkward. He eventually went quiet. Over half an hour later, we arrived at his parents' complex. I followed him into the elevator. Even before stepping out, I could hear Kyle's happy laughter. In the living room, Kyle was playing with the latest toy in hand. His grandma emerged from the kitchen with crabs, followed by Emily, who was helping. She looked toward Kyle and asked, Kyle, do you like the gift your auntie got you? She had it brought from overseas just for you. I love it. And I really want the chocolate too. But Mom never lets me have it, Kyle replied, jumping up to hug her. Jake's mom turned to them with an approving look and praised Emily. Emily, you're so considerate. Ava is just too strict. She won't let Kyle eat this or that. Poor Kyle, she said. I didn't let Kyle eat chocolate because he's allergic to cocoa. Once he had chocolate given by someone and got sick instantly, throwing up and having diarrhea all night. Seeing me watching quietly at the door, Jake cleared his throat and said, "Kyle, Mom and I are here." Yet, Kyle simply looked up at us and unwillingly hid behind his grandma, mumbling, "Why did Mom come too? I wanted to stay longer at Grandma's." I entered, glancing at Emily, when Jake quickly explained, "I didn't invite Emily. Emily is my goddaughter now. I invited her over for dinner." "Is that too much to ask?" Jake's mom said, looking at me with an unapologetic expression. "Goddaughter? Yes, Emily's a smart, sensible girl, and I really like her." "If Jake wasn't married, Mom?" Jake hastily interrupted. "It's Kyle's birthday. Let's not say these things." Reluctantly, Jake's mom closed her mouth. "Ava, don't be mad. I'm close with Jake's mom. I've longed for family since losing mine early. Being her goddaughter doesn't threaten you," Emily said. "If it really bothers you, I won't come again." "Oh please, Emily, you don't need to say much. You not coming? I won't agree to that. Let's eat. It's dinner time." Jake tried to change the subject quickly. He nudged his mom towards the kitchen to serve the rest of the dishes, and Emily followed, leaving me and Kyle alone in the dining room. But he was too busy with his new toy to even notice me. For Kyle, I called out. He looked up at me, clearly unhappy that I'd interrupted him. "Come here, I want to talk to you." He finally shuffled over and plopped down a seat away from me. "I want to ask you something. If Mom and Dad got a divorce, would you want to live with me?" He looked up, stared at me for a few seconds, then suddenly started giggling. I was stunned. I'd imagined many reactions, but not this one. "No way. I don't want to live with you. If you and Dad split, no one would keep watching over me. Plus, Dad could marry Emily then, right? Emily would be my mom, and that would be awesome. I've always wanted Emily to be my mom. Well, there goes my last bit of hope." Just like in the past, all he cared about was Emily. I'll respect his choice. Jake came out carrying a dish, and naturally sat beside me. I noticed Emily's expression change before she casually sat on his other side. He picked up some braised pork and placed it in my bowl. "Ava, you should eat more." Emily wasn't the only one caught off guard. Jake's mother was surprised too. It was something Jake used to do only for himself in the past. The meal was filled with mixed feelings all around. As it was about to end, I saw everyone was there and decided to break the news about the divorce. I put my chopsticks down. "Mom, Jake and I want to tell you something." Seeing how serious I suddenly was, Jake paused, looking uncomfortably at me. "We're planning to split, Ava. Let me get you some soup." He interrupted loudly, standing up abruptly. I glanced at him and wasn't planning to back off. "We're planning to get a divorce. Ava, this chicken soup was stewed all afternoon by Mom. You should have some." He pretended not to hear what I had said, turned around, and grabbed a bowl to serve me soup. Without a word, I stood up, grabbed my bag, and prepared to leave. He grabbed my arm, almost pleading, "Ava, I don't agree to a divorce." Jake's mom snapped out of her shock, abruptly standing up. "Jake, divorce her. What does she think she's got going on? Once you leave her, I doubt anyone would want a second-hand woman like her. And it's perfect. Emily can become my daughter-in-law, which makes me really happy." Emily, standing beside her, couldn't hide the joy in her eyes hearing those words. "Well then, let me congratulate these two in advance," I said, shaking off Jake's hand and addressing his mom. Then I looked at Kyle, who was still eating. "Kyle, you live with your dad and grandma, okay?" "Mom, don't say that," Jake shouted. I took the chance to open the door and got into the elevator. I didn't expect him to chase after me. "Ava." I didn't turn around. Then I heard a scream from upstairs. Jake's mom's voice echoed loudly, "Jake, come back." Emily fell. Jake stopped in his tracks. I turned to look at him. He lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. "Jake, stop lying to yourself. You can't ignore Emily." "No, Ava, trust me, I'll handle everything. Give me 3 days, and I'll give you a satisfactory answer," he said, turning and walking away. I watched him vanish once more, feeling somewhat helpless. How many times in these 7 years had he left me for Emily? "Jake, I'm not changing my mind." In those 3 days, I heard neither Jake nor Emily showed up for work. 3 days later, Jake appeared at my dorm door. He looked rough, with stubble and dark circles under his eyes. He handed me a document. I took it and opened it. It was the divorce agreement I had given him. He had signed his name on the last page. I raised an eyebrow, tucked it away, and prepared to close the door. Ava, he stopped me. This past week, Emily was in the hospital. So no need to explain. I shook the divorce papers. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. Whether you're with Emily or someone else, you don't have to report to me. Emily, she tried to kill herself. Hearing this, I wasn't shocked. I asked him, oh, so she's not pretending anymore? He lowered his head again, not meeting my eyes. With a click, I shut the door, leaving him outside. I heard a soft apology. Ava, I'm sorry. Looking at the signed divorce papers, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Finally, I had walked out of this mess. Jake, I wish you the best in your upcoming surgery after your accident. Emily can go all out to save you. I'm not getting involved in this drama anymore. A week later, Emily returned to the hospital, looking healthy and radiant. No one could tell she'd almost ended up in the ICU after a suicide attempt. Back with her was a big, sparkly diamond ring. At lunchtime in the cafeteria, Emily and her friends purposely sat behind me, making sure I heard every word. Emily, that huge rock is stunning. It's Dior, right? Jake must have spent a fortune. Well, he can afford it. Besides this, he bought me several rare leather bags. He said as long as I like it, it's no problem. Jake really loves you. You're so lucky. Jake is the dream guy for so many female doctors and nurses here. I can't believe you snagged him right after the divorce. Another woman chimed in. Emily, when's the wedding with Jake? We're planning for next month. My mom checked the calendar and found some good days for a wedding. Emily said, a bit shyly. Wow, you're already calling her mom. Teased Ava. Emily giggled, she's always liked me. Since Jake and I are definitely getting married, she told me to start calling her mom. By the way, this jade bracelet was a gift from her. She said it's passed down to the daughters-in-law in Jake's family. Ava remarked, you're so lucky. Jake's great, but he's been married before and has a kid. Otherwise, he'd be perfect. Emily grinned, I love kids. Kyle and I get along so well. He even says I'm better to him than his own mom. He keeps telling me he loves me and dreams of having me as his mom. And guess what? He called me mom when I got discharged from the hospital, Emily said excitedly. Then she suddenly noticed Ava and added, oh, Ava, you're here too. Don't take it the wrong way. I wasn't trying to brag. I'm just so happy and wanted to share it. Ava calmly put down her chopsticks and whispered in Emily's ear, don't worry. Seeing someone scoop up the trash I tossed away makes me happy. It's like recycling waste. Emily's face changed, and she stood up angrily. You're just bitter because Jake's marrying me, not you. Stop pretending you're not jealous. Ava chuckled and patted Emily's shoulder. Emily, keep that act up. Don't let Jake see the real you just before the wedding. You know how much he loves that sweet image of you. No worries, I heard every single word you wanted me to hear. With Emily fuming, Ava walked away, but not before Emily tried to trip her, causing Ava to spill leftovers and soup on Emily's head. Emily cried out, and by the time Jake arrived, Ava had already noticed the surveillance cameras and calmly said, the cameras will show who started it. Jake looked worriedly at Ava. Are you okay? She brushed him off. I'm fine. Emily, I have zero interest in what you and Jake have going on. Let's keep it professional. Otherwise, I'll spill the beans on everything. A week later, while preparing for a business trip, Ava was about to catch a cab when Jake approached. Business trip? He asked. Yep, 2 to 3 months. Want a ride? He offered. Ava declined, no thanks. As her cab arrived, she looked at him one last time and said, sometimes fate is in your hands, Jake. Take care. And with that, she left. Later at the airport, messages from her work group chat exploded. Jake had an accident near the hospital. They're taking him to the ER. Ava ignored the messages, switching her phone to airplane mode. 3 hours later, when she landed, she found out the full story. On his way to Emily's birthday, Jake crashed. Emily, being a doctor, operated on him, but there were complications. Jake didn't make it. When his mom found out, she went berserk and wanted Emily to pay for her son's life, causing chaos at the hospital. Emily was under investigation and temporarily suspended. Reports came in. A nurse said Jake was conscious for a moment before he passed. He was crying, murmuring something like, sorry, Ava. And why didn't I save him? Jake was gone. Emily was in serious trouble, suspended and being looked into. Jake's mom was furious with her. She brought relatives to Emily's house every day, demanding compensation. Eventually, Emily sold her house and gave all her savings to Jake's mom. But that wasn't enough. She kept causing a scene at the hospital. The hospital had no choice but to let Emily go. She lost her job too. Kyle was sent to a boarding school by Jake's mom. By the time I got back from training, it had all been over for more than a month. I got promoted as expected, finally becoming an attending physician. 3 years later, I was heading to the grocery store after work. Just as I left my building, someone bumped into me, dropping my phone, cracking its screen. He covered his face, ready to run, but I caught him quickly. When he turned, I was breathless. It was Kyle. Kyle, he had gotten so much thinner. The mischievous look in his eyes had dimmed. Hearing me call him, he couldn't hold back and leapt into my arms, sobbing. "Mom." He cried, "Mom, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. I miss you so much." Right then, a little girl ran up from behind me. "Mom, you forgot your keys." Kyle froze. I turned, taking the girl's hand, and introduced, "This is Olivia." The girl was the child I saved from the beach in a previous life. This time, I found her on the day of the incident and got her to safety before the waves hit. She later told me she went to the beach to catch fish to make soup for her grandma. She didn't have parents, just a grandma who collected trash for a living. Her grandma got sick, and she wanted to find something to help her. At that moment, I left her my phone number and told her to reach out if she needed help. When she called, it was the day her grandma passed away. I helped her with the funeral. Before leaving, looking at this sensible child, I had an idea. I knelt down and asked her, "Olivia, would you like to be my daughter?" I adopted Olivia. She's very sweet and sensible. Kyle hesitated before speaking. She called you mom just now?" Once more, I opened my eyes to a month before Jake's accident. Jake. Yeah. The kid couldn't hide his disappointment. He lowered his head, shouldering his backpack, and turned away slowly. As he was about to disappear from my sight, I called out, "Kyle." He turned back surprised. "If you're not happy at Grandma's, you can come back to Mom." He interrupted me with a smile. "No, Grandma is nice to me, Mom. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I was immature back then." With that, he quickly hopped on the bus. My throat tightened. Maybe this time, he really was sorry. Later, I heard Emily had found a new boyfriend and was engaged. But on her wedding day, Jake's mom crashed the ceremony with a group, creating chaos. She exposed everything about Emily's marriage to her son. Emily's fiancé called off the wedding. Before she left, Jake's mom warned Emily not to think about remarrying. As long as she was alive, Emily would never have a good life. But none of that had anything to do with me. The end.